Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome. This is Multilingual Dad. My name is Yoshito, and today I am with Dr. Ute Lima Ribold. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'm really excited to have you today to be able to ask you questions, especially because you're a specialist in the field of raising multilingual and multicultural children, and because you have teenage children as well. So I guess compared to many people, you're a bit ahead, and you have also been raised multilingual yourself. So you have lived the experience of growing multilingual. And so I want to touch on these several points. Is there anything you want to add to introduce yourself?
Um, yes, maybe. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Yoshito, for inviting me and for having this conversation. We had it already offline, so I'm very happy that we can meet and that we can continue this conversation this way. Yeah, what can I add? Yes, I grew up with multiple languages myself, with German and Italian. My parents are German, but we lived in Italy, and my sister and I, we grew up with Italian and German, then French when we were 6 was the first language that we were taught in school as additional language.
Okay.
Later, there was also English and Latin and all kind of other languages. So by 18, I think we both spoke and read and wrote 4 languages, and then we're learning others along the way. So yes, this is a little bit about myself. Just to start with, I think maybe we can fill it in later.
I guess the question, like, when there are so many languages, is like, what was the logic, like who was speaking to whom in what language? And between siblings as well, it can be a different language.
Yes, my parents are both German, so the home language was exclusively German. But we had many friends who were Italian or locals. So whenever they came to our home, we would switch to Italian, which was very often. So it was also one of the languages spoken at home. And also French friends, we would speak also a bit of French. And I had some Dutch friends as well, but I didn't speak Dutch yet then. Now I speak, I live in the Netherlands. But at that time, I only learned what children learn very fast, are swear words and all kind of things that you like your children to learn that early. But that was our family language, our home language was mainly German. But we would always just welcome other languages, also English. My parents were in an international environment. So we heard all kind of languages from very early on.
Okay, so the main language at home was German between everyone, but sometimes you could hear or speak other languages. Okay, great. And so now you're helping other multilingual, multicultural families on their journey. Have you always had this like this, how do you say, this dream of helping others on their journey like that, or like multilingual, multicultural, or no? It was like
No, not always. I mean, I grew up this way, so I always thought for many years it's very normal. Yeah, it's how many people around me grew up as well. Not everyone, but the majority. So I had a career in academia actually, and I worked at the Department of Roman Studies at the University in Zurich. And there at the chair of Italian historical linguistics. So historical linguistics, you know, where the words come from and how languages change. And I did my PhD in medieval French literature. So, from Roman Occitan. Something to you. But so my background is in philology. So there is linguistics, there is communication, how communication works, how you take turns, how this all is set up in social settings and families, in texts, yes. So there is a little bit where I come from. The
Okay.
reason why I started doing this was actually when I got my own child. That was my son who was born in Italy before we moved here to the Netherlands 15 years ago.
Okay.
He was born in Italy, and we were, yes, discussing with my husband what kind of languages will we speak with our son. We
Ah,
thought we would stay there for longer, and my most emotional language is Italian, so I said, okay, I'm going to talk Italian. We speak German with each other, my husband and I,
okay.
and he would speak Swiss German, so three languages in
Ah,
one home,
okay. Yeah.
which was fine. That was fine. But
Okay.
then we moved to the Netherlands, um, and this all changed. My son
Yeah.
talking Italian with me. You know, the Swiss German and Dutch have many sounds in common.
Ah,
And
okay.
he was 2.5 years old, and somehow he enjoyed speaking or learning Dutch. And I also enjoyed learning it.
Ah, yeah.
Found it, then and still a very important task, a very important thing. When you move to a country, you learn the language.
Yeah.
Yeah? Especially if you have a child and you want the child to fit in and yourself too.
Yeah.
So we learned alongside each other, and then things changed a year later when my twin daughters were born. But you were
Ah,
asking if I'm always doing this or why I am doing what I'm doing.
okay. Yeah.
And I got my children, and I saw what we were also struggling with in our family, although I knew what to expect when one is raising children with multiple languages, as I experienced it myself,
Yeah.
and I knew the literature, the research about it. And I saw what other families were going through. I said, well, I can help you. And then I started actually more than 15 years ago in helping my friends, helping
Ah,
my colleagues. And then all of a sudden someone said, okay, would you like to hold a talk about this at our school or at a daycare or something? So yeah, why not? And this is where it started. And
okay.
yes, it's this way.
So it's a bit by accident, but you had all the tools in place already. You had thought about it, and ah,
I had thought about this, but then also I couldn't pursue my career in academia, having three children under four when we
yeah,
arrived here, and with no help, you know, every expat or international, you deal with everything yourself, at least
yeah,
in the beginning. So I started with trying to learn all kind of other things, as, for example, learning more about intercultural communication.
yeah. Okay.
So what it means to communicate effectively across cultures.
Hmm.
This is my other leg, so to say, where I
Yeah,
hold trainings for internationals, but they actually are very nicely combinable, helping the families then also within their family, the core family, and in the broader society to
yeah,
maintain the languages, understand them, and also maintain the cultures and understand the new ones. It's a nice combination because language comes with culture and
yeah.
culture with language, so we cannot separate them.
And culture is a bit like I feel like before a long time ago, I was tutoring Japanese children who came to France, and so they had to integrate a new culture, and there were many problems because the way the parents were expecting the teachers to speak or to react was different from what they knew and what they thought was normal. And so there was a lot of dialogue about like what's normal in France, what's normal in Japan. And for the children as well, the children generally fit in really quickly, especially when they were younger. But there was also always this cultural side to fitting in a new culture.
Yes, absolutely. It's not only the fitting in. I mean, you want to fit in, you want to belong, you don't want to be the odd one standing out.
Yeah,
And what can seem quite quickly done by children or by some adults as well, we go through phases. And there are
mm,
some phases where you say, okay, I just adapt very quickly. But there always comes that moment where all of a sudden things seem odd or too difficult, or you realize that this switching in between not only languages but also cultures,
yeah,
beliefs, ways things are done and said can be quite tiring.
yeah,
And if you think our children and ourselves, we switch in between these different worlds like 100 times a day, back and
yeah,
forth. that is very tiring. So I think I saw that many families, especially those who grew up, or the parents who grew up in monocultural or monolingual settings, they were exhausted.
Yeah, I
They
guess.
frustrated. How can I do this? Or isn't this too much for my child? It's already too much for myself.
Ah, yeah.
These were things that we are constantly discussing and
Yeah.
working on.
Oh, yeah. But see, like, even my brother and I were brought up so bilingual, but we were brought up in France, and now he lives in Japan. And from time to time, we chat like that, and he says it's so like relaxing to be able to speak in French and to just say whatever comes in his mind, because like the way you express yourself with, I guess it's different as well if it's a workplace or friends, but he knows about the Japanese culture, he knows about this, but because he grew up in France, his working or thinking process are all in French, like a French person. So for him, it's difficult as well. It's tiring.
Yes, and we never know. I mean, if you grow up with several languages and several cultures, sometimes I always talk about base culture or base language.
Okay.
It's the one where you build on, or
Oh yeah.
you measure everything that is new or everything that you add later on. You compare it subconsciously very often. But this
Yeah.
is exactly what your brother is saying. So he feels much more at ease. It's like, oh, like coming home, right?
Yeah.
That you can finally just say what you think, the way you think it, and you don't have to discuss with if this is now valuable in that context or not, because the other person just understands.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is where I think the major challenge lies when we raise our children with multiple languages. Which will be the language or the culture where they feel at home?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And can we actually bring it so far if we foster this language while living abroad, you know?
Yeah. That's actually something that I wonder as well, because so my wife is Korean, I'm French, but we live in the UK. For me, like, I'm thinking they're going to grow up as British teenagers, adults, but they have this French and Korean in them. But so I understand that their base culture is going to be the English one. Is that the most common thing?
Mm. I know that many parents cringe when I say that, but it's actually so.
Yeah.
With, let's say, 95% of my friends who also grew up in Italy or grew up abroad, or those that I know who grew up in one place or two or three places,
Yeah.
usually the places where they have in child memories and experiences during childhood that they feel mostly at home.
Okay.
So this doesn't mean, though, that if they have had some experience also in the other culture, in one of the cultures of the parents while living there, maybe for a few years, this won't happen also in these cultures and languages.
Yeah.
But in my personal experience, and also that I observe in others who are in my situation, who also grew up somewhere else and then maybe turned back to the place where their parents came from, they still have this otherness in themselves
Yeah.
that they long for to share, which maybe is not possible for those who, repatriate. It's very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I read in a book you contributed to called How to Raise Confident Multilingual Multicultural Children that it hasn't always been easy for you to have different cultures, different languages. And you said you were trying to hide your Italianness or Germanness. Can you explain a bit that and how you overcame this struggle?
Yes, I think what I said before, right? We all go through different phases. It's not because we give our children during the first years 2, 3, 4 languages that it will always stay that way, and that they will always like language 1 or language A or however you want to call it
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
This is something that many parents again struggle with. when they realize, okay, I've put so much energy into something, but in the end, my child will decide what language he or she prefers.
Yeah.
And the reasons for this preference of the other language is not in the hands of the parents for the whole life. So it depends on the social environment, on the different experiences that we do, that we make, the people that we meet, who our friends are, what we like from the culture, what we don't like. I mean, even
It's
if you
true,
think
yeah.
about food that you don't like, or you just feel odd in eating something, okay, then you have a preference of eating something else. But yes, I had to hide, or I felt that I had to hide my Germanness at times, especially when I wanted to fit in, or when I saw
Okay.
that being German was what I call historically loaded.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that people would have this prejudice against Germans, which
Yeah.
you just experience if you grow up abroad.
Yeah.
If you grow up in Germany, you might experience this, but never to the extent as when you grow up abroad and people, yeah, point at you and say you're a terrible German and what you did in the Second World War is just not
Even
okay.
if you did nothing.
No, I did nothing. But I think, well, we all have, we talk always about heritage language, heritage culture. There is something
Yeah.
that we might feel responsible for, even if we were not there.
Yeah.
So it's this association that the society or the community does
Yeah.
that has a great impact on children.
Yeah.
Uh, and not only children, also on some adults, right? It depends also who is telling you that.
Yeah.
And if it's friends or people that you would like to be friends with, then you think twice before you say you're German
Ah, true.
or you are Italian or whatever.
Mm.
But I was always the Italian when we were in Germany and the German when we were in Italy. So it was never the one who
Yeah.
actually belongs there.
They
It's
will
always,
always see like the difference, not what's similar.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And
But
yeah.
you asked how I overcame
Yeah.
that or how I managed to come to terms with this.
Mm.
I think it was in my mid-20s. So I think there is a period of time, you know, when teenagers, young adults are trying to find out who they are and where they belong to. We all go through this phase at some point or another.
Yeah.
But what helped me was when I realized, well, I can be both to some extent, and not being that German or that Italian like someone who has always lived in Germany or only in Germany, or someone who has always lived or only lived in Italy.
Mm.
That's not a negative point of view. There's nothing negative, nothing to be
Yeah.
ashamed of. But that actually adding them was just making me
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were others who were also German, Italian, and in the same situation, but everyone experiences these cultures and languages to a different extent and like different things. So I think they are unique.
Yeah.
So it's also a bit what I tell my children when they struggle with this is instead of thinking you are neither nor,
Yeah.
yeah, you're neither Swiss nor German nor Italian nor Dutch nor English or
Yeah.
British. You are not only, but also. So you're
Ah,
not
yeah.
only German, you're also Swiss German, and you are also a little bit British because they go to a British school.
Ah,
You're
okay.
also a bit Dutch. So you are a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
you actually have the opportunity to choose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just reminds me like in Japanese when we say we are half this, half that, we say we're half. But at some point, I remember my mom telling me when I was about 12 that the term half was negative, so it was starting to change it to double, so double instead of half. And that's really like showing that you're not just either part, you're both together, and you have two, yeah, you have more choices, like you said. Yeah. And so you're teaching coping mechanism to your children, and you can see all the benefits of being multicultural, multilingual. So I guess when they were younger, they didn't see that, but what did you do to try to make them understand or see the positive and yeah, the positive in being multicultural? Is that
Yes.
because you said it's to do with the experience you have in life? Is there anything you encourage them to experience?
Yes, I mean, when we have these conversations with our children, usually they come from a place where they were hurt by others who say, you are not good enough, or you are just, you're German, or you are Swiss, or you don't understand because you're Swiss, but we
Oh,
are British, or we are Dutch. I mean, we have to be prepared to this.
yeah.
So what I did was listening and trying to understand where it comes from, the
Mm.
struggle. And then my three children all reacted in different ways.
Yeah.
So there is not one response that suits all.
Yeah.
But I think it's mainly trying to understand where this comes from and what the child actually is hurt about. So
Mm.
the hurting comes from a place where you expect someone else to be actually understanding. And if they are hurt because someone says they have an accent, for example, or if they are hurt because someone said they are not good enough at writing German or whatever,
Okay.
then I said, well, there are things that you can change, you can practice.
Yeah.
And there are things that you cannot change, like your genes, the way you look,
Yeah.
the way you talk about things. This is your own way of doing things.
Mm.
So if there is something that you can change, you can decide what you want to change and how much you want to change it.
Yeah.
If there is something that you cannot change because you cannot just choose other parents or look differently. You can maybe color your hair or I don't know what. You can also do that. I don't have anything against that, but I think you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to make them understand, you are just the way you are, and you have to be kind to yourself and embrace how you are.
Okay. Yeah.
And those who can understand this and can embrace how you are maybe the better friends somehow. We had this discussion very often, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
tough to be a young person growing up abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. And so because of your personal background, but also professional background with dealing with so many families, is there any recurring problem that you see, and what would be the solution to prevent that? So instead of reacting, how could you be proactive and make sure your children don't face certain problems?
Do you have any problems in mind now?
Um, I feel when you raise children to be so multilingual, multicultural, there is this, at some point, I'm thinking every child goes through, am I this, like this this nationality or this one? Am I both? Who am I? So like identity crisis, but I guess there are others as well, maybe.
Mhm. Yes, as I said, I think we all go through these phases where we question also, even adults, right? If you move to another place and all of a sudden you say, what am I doing here? Do I really want to stay? Or maybe we move to another place because it's nicer, it's easier for me on so many levels. But
Yeah.
ask what I would tell parents or how I help parents. It's actually the first things that parents should be aware of what their expectations are,
Hmm.
if they are realistic in the time frame that they have. Maybe they are staying 3 years or 4 years in a place and they want their children to become fluent in the local language, but they send them to another school because they're going to move. Then it's not very realistic to
Yeah.
think that children will become fluent within
Hmm.
3 years, depending of course also on the age and what kind of school they will go to. So there are many things to consider. With regards to identity and maybe also language preferences, that comes a little bit with that.
Yeah.
We as parents, we cannot determine what our children will choose at some point.
Yeah.
So, children can grow up in exactly the same conditions, social conditions, language conditions, political conditions, and have different preferences at some point.
Yeah. I guess
So,
even between siblings it happens.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I have 3 children. They have all 3 different preferences for languages and for
Okay.
culture, like for meals or for hobbies.
Yeah.
It's the same thing
Yeah.
in the right. If you have a child that prefers playing drums, the next one doesn't like to play any instruments but does sports.
Yeah.
This is how it goes.
Yeah.
And yes, although of course languages are well, we need to communicate and to connect. You don't necessarily need to play piano to connect with your piano playing child, but the languages that we share are important.
Okay.
And what I always try to point out is that at least we should have one language that we all share.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it be now one of the languages that the parents speak, so one of their heritage or their preferred language, or another one. That's the most important thing for families. If you have this concept of a family as a unity and a
Yeah.
team, yes, that stays together
Oh,
and
yeah.
supports each other,
Yeah.
then there should be some kind of a common baseline
Okay.
that happens.
So at least one common language as well that you can all communicate in and you can all understand each other.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I wanted to go to another topic. So your children are teenagers and they speak 4 languages?
Yes, to different extents.
Okay.
Yes, they speak German. It's now our home language. Some time ago, it was also Italian and Swiss German, but then we narrowed it down to German for a reason, because my daughters, they are twins.
Yeah.
They developed a secret language among twins when
Oh,
they were 16 months old.
okay.
Although I knew that this can happen, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought, well, yeah, let's wait until it's over and then everything is fine. But my son was suffering. He was really
Okay.
suffering from the situation because they would speak the secret language also with him. And then they
Oh.
started even
Yeah,
speaking
so
it.
expecting him to understand or? Oh, okay.
Yes, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
And neither could I. I wrote down what they were saying. It really had nothing to do neither with Swiss German, with Italian,
Ah,
with Dutch and German that they were exposed to at that time. There were some intonations that would give away what they were saying. So
yeah.
I was aware when they were asking each other to do something. And I said, what is she asking now? But this situation went so far that my son was really frustrated,
Yeah.
distressed. And I decided to sit down with my husband, my son, who was 3.5, 4 years old at that time. Yeah, almost 4. A little
Yeah.
bit older than 4, I think. But he had very strong opinions with regards to languages. And he said, I want to speak German. It was okay if we speak German all together. And I said, okay, then I agreed with that. And my
Yeah.
husband as well. We said, let's try this at least for a month or 2. Then we had holidays and that was fine. And within 2 weeks, my daughter stopped speaking the secret language and went
Oh,
to German, which they
okay.
already did before.
So it,
Just,
it decreased because they saw everybody speaking just one language.
I have no, I mean, I still think they might have stopped anyway.
Ah, okay, yeah.
For sure, the situation, you could really feel it, was there was less apprehension or stress in the family or among the children when we switched to German only.
Okay.
Well, German only is not that correct because I still sang songs in Italian. My husband sang songs in
Ah,
Swiss.
okay.
And so we had our little international islands anywhere.
Yeah.
So I call them islands. These are the moments where we are maybe one-on-one and we want to dig
Ah,
deeper
okay, yeah.
into the languages. So we maintain these languages, but they were not in the foreground anymore. German
Okay.
in the foreground. It's like, yes, it became more important for them.
Yeah.
They still understand and speak Swiss German. They understand and speak to certain levels of fluency also Italian. We have spent many holidays, many summers in the northern part of, no, in the southern part of Switzerland, where my sister also lives, the Italian-speaking part, so that they got a feeling of what it is living there and with talking and understanding Italian.
Okay.
But to sum up, yes, they speak German now at home. That's our home language or family language. But we also speak occasionally Italian or Swiss German.
Okay.
They speak English when they come home from school, for example, and they want to tell us what they have learned or what was going on during their day. It's English for the first hour, so to say.
Okay.
And then around dinner time, we are all in the German mode again. Or Dutch when the friends come over or when they talk in Dutch. So, but yes, these are the languages. Then they have learned also French and Spanish at school.
As foreign languages.
Yes, as foreign languages, but they, I'd say they speak, read, and write quite fluently in English. It's a school language, in German and in Dutch.
Okay.
A little bit in French and Spanish. Okay. And well, Italian, they don't like to read that much yet. My son had a period of time, a phase where he would also read in Italian, but that stopped.
Okay.
So he can reactivate it anytime.
Yeah.
And Swiss German is only a spoken language. So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So we cannot, well, we can have intuitive writing, right?
Yeah, I've seen that things can be spelled, but it depends on the person or the region.
And the region, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You have different words for different things depending on the region. And I'm more the speaker of the Zurich Swiss German, and my husband from Lucerne, which is slightly different. So it's funny to see the differences. But I'm happy that they can even understand all kind of different dialects, Swiss German dialects, and that's amazing.
Gives them a good opportunity to have two parents speaking differently.
Yes, it is. And then my son is now, since two and a half years, he's teaching himself Chinese together with Chinese, yes.
Okay. And so in the, except for Swiss German, obviously, but in the other languages, have you taught, and you and your husband, have you taught them how to read and write? How did it happen?
We tried, I must say I tried, but then I think in order to be able to teach the language to your children, you have to be willing and have the patience to put on the teacher's head.
Yeah.
This worked for some time. It worked with my son.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the situations in the evening, I don't know how other families do this, if they manage, but I did not. I had always the two girls walking around who wanted to listen, and then they turned. I mean, maybe I was not patient enough, but what I did, I didn't give up, but I gave them the decision to decide what they wanted to learn. So when my son wanted to learn how to read German, I helped him, but I didn't force him. I didn't sit him down and said, okay, now we do German, because they had so much on their plate already from school.
Yeah.
So I knew that if they learn how to read in English, which is not that easy,
yes.
If they learn how to read in English, then I can transfer these skills also to the home languages. And this is what happened. And they all reacted in different ways. My son would read, I don't know, Harry Potter in English and also in German. One of my daughters would attempt to do this, and the other one would just refuse. She doesn't like to read. To listen to audiobooks. So I said, okay, then you listen to audiobooks in German.
Yeah.
It's also fine.
Yeah.
I think it pretty much depends also on the language goals that you have. Although we all start with, I want them to be perfectly fluent, that's to say up to level C2 in no time.
Yeah.
Life teaches us something else, or let's say children. So I went with the different developments that my children had and the different preferences they had. And
Yes.
I just decided, I decided to support them with what they were able to do at the
Yeah.
phases that they were in, and just support them as much as I can.
Yeah, I guess that's the most important, because you can't really force anyone to learn anything if they don't want to. And if they want to, it's you don't need to do much and they learn really quickly. So
Yes, especially I tried for almost a year to sit down with them regularly during the week. But then they had after school activities that changed from term to term. So it wasn't possible every Thursday. So you're constantly adjusting. And I said, I don't want them to have the impression that learning German is a burden.
yeah,
So I want them to have this as a pleasure and something that is exciting to explore.
yeah,
So what I did instead was to provide them resources. If one likes audiobooks it is. If one
yeah.
likes to cook, cookbooks in German or Italian.
Mm,
That's making the deal. So this is the vocabulary that they want. If
yeah,
one likes geography, let's be geography books or National Geographic or yes, anything
yeah,
that I find. So I'm less the steering person who says where to go and how to do this. I listen to what they are interested in and then I provide the input
yeah,
because I think it makes more sense to them. And I must say, I'm also a learner like that. If I'm interested in something, in a topic, and I'm learning a new language, then I learn much easier
yeah,
than if someone sits down and says, okay, now, my name is John. I like apples. This is so boring.
yeah,
So I actually adapted it to their needs and their interests.
yeah.
So far, it's fine. I know I planted the seeds. I don't know if there will be a tree one day or just a little flower. I mean,
Yeah.
flowers are beautiful as well. So
And also it can take time, like they can not do it for a while and then start doing it after. And yeah,
they can activate it at any time if they need and if they want.
yeah.
I was in that situation when I was 4 years old. I watched Swiss-German TV channel that we had in Italy only for 1.5 years or 2 years.
Okay.
And no one was speaking with me in Swiss German. So I learned by just listening. And I said,
Ah,
well, a little bit is there. And then when I moved to Swiss German part of Switzerland, it took me very little time to really become fluent and
because you
to
had it
speak.
already in
I
you.
had it somewhere, yes. And I
Oh,
mean, I was 18, 19 when I moved there. So that was 14 years later.
oh wow. Okay, so still like it shows that like when you're little, you can still remember a lot of things that may be much easier.
Yes, but I think the factor of enjoying what you are listening to or watching is very much determining if it sticks or not.
And so you mentioned that at some point, so there was some times where when your son was struggling with like your daughter speaking another language, etc. And I guess there are times as well where you don't really know who you are and you try to identify yourself as due to your parents' origins, nationalities, languages. And has any of your child at some point refused to speak one language? Because you have quite a lot.
Yes, my son refused to respond in Italian when we moved to the Netherlands.
Ah, okay.
He refused to respond to me in Italian. He was also observing me learning Dutch,
Ah,
and the whole environment was Dutch. He was going to a daycare 2 days a week just to get in contact with peers, with children. Um, and I think this refusal of Italian was for him a way to signalize, okay, we're not in Italy anymore. There's no Italian boy or anyone from my former friends there. So I just turned the page and I'm learning Dutch.
okay.
So I kept on speaking Italian to him, with
Yeah.
him, we were singing songs. He would reply every now and then, but it was not the main language anymore for him. So he
Okay.
would respond rather in Swiss German than in
Oh,
Italian.
okay. Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
I understood what was going on. He was adjusting to the new environment. So I
Mm.
knew that at some point this would come back. Then, of course, the thing with my daughters happened,
Yeah.
and I abandoned, so to say, Italian for a while as the majority language. But when my son was 11 years old, he asked me to please speak Italian with him again.
Oh, that's
So,
nice.
yes, that was
Mm.
really one of the best days of my life at some point. And I said, yes, we are going to speak Italian when we are one-on-one, and we really enjoy it because we have this bond, this Italian bond between
Yeah.
us, I think.
Ah,
So this is something that I still speak Italian. Usually when I want my children to do something quickly or they have to listen to me, I usually switch to Italian, and then they just know now it's serious. So
oh, yeah.
I use that language as the trigger language, so to say.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But that's really interesting, like because you like as I said, you have teenage children now. So like for me who has just young children, it's really enlightening to see like all the things that could happen, how to deal with them. And so I hope like the people who are going to watch this are going to benefit from that as well. And yeah, so I just wanted to say, so if people want to get in touch with you or find you online, what are the different ways they can do that?
So they can find me on my website.
Yeah,
That's utesinternationallounge.com.
yeah,
Or they can find me on my Facebook group or page with the same name, or
yeah,
in my Facebook group, Multilingual Families.
yeah.
This is how you can find me. Yes.
Okay. But thank you very much for your time. And yeah, thank you and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you very much for this great conversation that we had.
Thank you. It was really, really interesting. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Merci.